Welcome, everyone, to the Absolute Geek Podcast. I am Matt.
I am Snide Kyle.
And tonight with us, we have two very special guests. One, I want to introduce the Absolute Geek Podcast Station to Adonis.
Hi. Hello. I'm Adonis.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Adonis.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And we have another special guest tonight. We are kicking it off with creator and owner of Cosmic Times, Mr. Martin Pierro. How are you doing tonight, Mark?
How's it going? It's Martin, actually.
Martin. Oh, okay.
My brother's name is Mark. It used to get mixed up all the time, so don't worry about it.
Okay. See, I think our email was written Martin, but that's cool. Or
Mark.
Mark. I mean,
Mark,
sorry, Mark.
whatever.
I'm all messed up now.
I'm just happy to be here. You can call me whatever you want. It's fine.
We appreciate you joining us tonight, and glad we could sit down with you.
Awesome.
So why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about Cosmic Times?
Okay, cool. Cosmic Times is a small press publishing company I have here in South Florida. We've been at it for about 11 years now. Actually, we have been at it since 2008, I guess. So that's 11 years. Yeah. We started off just publishing my own stuff. Thought it was kind of fun, just something to do while I was working my day job. We'll talk about that later if you want to. But ultimately, I started publishing my own stuff. It took off very well, and I kind of did the math, and the only way to make it work was to scale up quickly. So I decided to bring other people on board, and things kind of snowballed. I worked with a lot of great folks. In 2015, we got picked up by Diamond, so we're in the previous catalog, and that kind of exploded things for us. And I always tell people the worst thing that can happen to you is success. It's the most financially crippling thing you're ever going to have happen to you, because now you have to pay bills and you have to do things. So that's kind of what I am. We publish comics. We publish comics I want to publish. Maybe that's selfish. I don't know, but it's the kind of comics I want to see. So that's what I put out there.
So now it's kind of my understanding. After doing a little bit of research, you started in this industry at the age of 12, publishing your own kind of fan magazine, Metropolis Times.
You did do a little digging. That's true. Yeah.
And you, what kind of, and you later on took it and turned it into Cosmic Times. So what kind of drove you to, I understand that you left the industry for a little bit and dabbled in some other entertainment, work, and then decided to come back. So what kind of drove you back to the business and wanted to do comic publishing?
Wow, I think you asked him 5 questions.
Maybe.
You're gonna have to
research, man.
You have to break it apart, and part 1A, part 2B. You're gonna have to go through it.
I'll speak quickly as I can. Well, I think like probably everybody else in this cube of boxes here, in this Brady Bunch box we have going on here, I read comics as a kid. When I was real little, I got into comics. I'm 47 now. I'm not ashamed to say I started reading Micronauts comics. Star Wars comics were huge when I was a kid. And I was in all that. I really like the licensed property stuff, but I like Fantastic Four and things like that. But I grew up watching Doctor Who on PBS. So I'm walking through what was called the Farmer's Market. It was like a little small, tiny mall we had here. It's since been demolished, but I was walking through it one day, and there's a little comic shop, and they had a Doctor Who comic, and it was $1.25 at the time. Comics were 60 cents, and I was like, "What the hell is this? $1.25 for a comic? That's incredible!" So I went inside. I had to have it, and I had to borrow money from my grandmother, because back then $1.25 was a lot. I bought it, and it was so expensive I had to take care of it. So I talked to the guy that owned the place. He talked to me about collecting comics, bags and boards and all that, and I got hooked. And then I was into comics heavily for years and years. And at the time, I knew I always wanted to do something in comics. I loved comics so much. And so I decided I wanted to do a fanzine. Fanzines were kind of a thing back in the 80s. I don't know if you guys remember. And this would have been 84, well, just before the crisis, so 84, 85-ish, the crisis, like it was an actual historical event. I reference it. But so I put a fanzine together, and I called it Metropolis Times, because the comic store was called Metropolis Comics. And that's when he sat me down and goes, "Listen, Martin, I'm not the only comic store in town." What? So I couldn't call it Metropolis Comics and sell it at other people's comic stores, so I renamed it Cosmic Times. We were going to call it Comic Times, but I thought that was too cheesy, so we went with Cosmic Times. And I published it in you take it, you get it photocopied, you staple it. And we had it in all the local shops here in South Florida. Plus we were shipping them all over the place. It was actually something that started growing. I have another story about an artist. I'll get to that in a minute from back then. But then, the worst thing that could happen to a comic book nerd was I discovered girls. And that stopped too, my comic collecting for a while. Kind of got out of it. I ended up going, as we're talking just before we started rolling, to the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale. I originally was going to go to the Ringling School of Art. I don't know if you heard about it. It's in Sarasota. And they had an animation program, hand-drawn animation. Dodged a bullet not getting into that because, clearly I would be out of work right now. So I went to the Art Institute and I studied film, it was called it was called music and television production, everybody thought that, or it was called music and video production. Everybody thought we're making music videos. No, it was just music production and television production. And so I did that, got out, ended up working in film, on stage. My last creative job was I was cutting infomercials. That was apparently South Florida is the capital of infomercials, and there was a lot of work for the company I was working with, and we were cranking on infomercials and all kinds of direct response things.
Did you like the vacuum sealer commercial?
We didn't do the vacuum sealer, but we did do I guess I can talk about it now. We sold a computer that didn't work. We could never get it to work when we had it on set, but it was the best computer ever. So we always just shot it till you never saw the monitor because it wouldn't turn on. It just don't believe what you see on TV, kids. So I did that, and then that they closed shop. 9/11 happened, and the business kind of shrunk a little bit. So I ended up getting a job working in IT at a law firm. As much as it was a great paying job, everybody at the firm was amazing. IT at a law firm is not your most creative job in the world. So I was left thinking, what am I going to do? And I had this concept for a television pitch from back when I worked in television and stuff, or at least was studying it. And I said, I can turn that into a comic. And I went to MegaCon in Orlando, sat on a few panels. Jeffrey Kaufman, who I always say is one of the people who got me interested in making comics. He does big city comics. And Christian Baranek, who was a dude at the time, convinced me that I should try to make comics. So I did. And like I just said, we had a huge success. My first book I put out was called Arthur the Legend Continues. It was based on an original television pilot for King Arthur in a post-apocalyptic England. And the book sold like hotcakes. And like I said, I had to scale up quickly to justify the cost of it all. And here we are now. Yeah, I answered all your questions. There you go.
You did. In fantastic fashion, too.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding that a lot of I know you have at least one book that is you're doing crowdfunding for, From Blood.
Yes, I've tried Kickstarter twice before, and it's always been a struggle. It's kind of been hit or miss. We do okay. We get funded, but never greatly.
So what are some challenges you run into with that and trying to crowdfund that book?
Well, this with From Blood, the challenges I'm finding I just had today. We were doing pretty good. Things started picking up, and I get a message: somebody canceled their pledge. Like, why would you pledge and then cancel it so quickly? It's kind of heartbreaking when you think, we're moving up, and then you look at this little chart you have on Kickstarter. Now it's pointing down again, and I'm like. So it's much more of an emotional struggle than anything else, just trying to get through it. But the reason I chose to go with Kickstarter nowadays, it seems that's the way to find an audience. Being in Diamond is not a guarantee audience anymore. My sales in Diamond, every book I put out always seem to slide a little further down. Not just from first to second issue, because that's always a drop, but just each series just never quite seem to do as well as the series before it.
What do you think that is? Do you think it's because of just the comic industry as a whole, of like the speculators and the new hot thing and everything's so extra flashy now and in and out? Do you think it's harder for the smaller guy to push its way through just to get a little bit of light, or what is your theory?
I will say it is very in and out right now. That is definitely for sure. You can see that with the big two, with them rebooting almost weekly, it feels like now. For me, I know that as over the last few years, I work closely with my local retailer. Comic shops are closing. There's not as many as there were 5 years ago when I got into Diamond. And I just sent out an email about we have a retailer tier on our From Blood Kickstarter, and I sent out an email, and 50 of the emails bounced back as no longer in service. And these are all retailers I used to email on a regular basis. So that shrunk the market. I think that Marvel is, I think I have it here somewhere. Marvel is stifling the industry with the Marvel's previews. It's massive. They're putting out so many books that they're strangling the retailers where they can't afford to. You have Marvel and DC have their own catalog, but in previews you have the front part of the catalog, which is IDW, Boom for some reason, Dark Horse, and Image. Then you have the back of the catalog where the rest of us live. And with Marvel and DC, or Marvel mostly putting out so many titles, retailers just can't afford to even order from the back of the catalog anymore. Like if you look at the numbers, because I follow comic numbers very closely because that's how I make my living, and you just see how low some of the Marvel and DC titles are hitting, and that's just pushing everybody further and further down, in my opinion.
Adonis.
Hi, I'm Adonis. Question.
You don't have to raise your hand here, Adonis. Feel free to just jump in whatever you want.
I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. So when it comes to that, the physical comics suffering from the decline and everything like that, if you're anywhere outside of the big two, do you think that's because people are veering away from the physical comics versus the digital comics? Are physical comics only for collecting and people actually read the digital versions?
I would love to say that digital was the key, but we have half of our titles on Comixology, and it's hardly a drop in the bucket versus what the amount of money we made with Diamond versus what we were making with Comixology is it's night and day. The pennies on Comixology, where it was at least a couple thousand each book on Diamond. It's funny we're talking about this. I was talking about this online on Facebook today. When I got in the industry, which was I guess 11 years ago now, everybody was saying if we don't get kids in the comics, the industry is going to die. We got to get kids in the comics so that they can grow up and be the next group that's buying comics, because we're all going to. I'm 47. I'm aging out of comics. People are aging out of comics.
Yeah.
And that next audience doesn't seem to be coming up. They're buying comics, but they're buying the Scholastic graphic novels. They're buying the stuff they sell at Target, and they're not buying those, obviously overpriced $3.99 floppies from the comic store, as we used to do, or we still do. I still do.
Yeah.
I buy way too many. I had a stack this big, and I'm going to read like 4 of them. I don't know why. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do I have long boxes of books I've never read and probably never will?
I had a book of mine today, and I was like, I don't even know why it's in here, but I still bought it.
Yeah. I love Star Wars. I buy the Star Wars series. I've read the first 4 issues. They're on 74 now, or 73, and I've only read 4 of them, but I have them all. And all the variants from that first issue, I have them all because again, as kids, we were programmed for that, and I don't think the next generation has been programmed for it as they should have been.
I'm sorry, I keep raising my hand.
Pointing to you, like, hey, you, go. Yeah.
You, sir, right there. I know that is definitely a big part of it, the passing on that need to collect these things, to read them, to dive into these worlds that these people create. I know for me, my brother's 10 years younger than me, and the comic book store that was by my house that's still there and still kind of booming. They have events and things like that. But, the audience isn't as big as it used to be. But the comic book store is Tate's Comics. Tate's
Comics down here, you mean?
Yeah, that's
okay,
what I grew up with. I would take him there and I would show him all the comics that I like, all the characters I like. We'd sit there and watch the cartoons and things like that. And now my brother, he plays for the Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons.
Hey.
And he came here when they played the Cardinals, and I took him to a comic book shop out here, and he was just like, man, it's been a while, but I still love this stuff. He's looking at figures to collect and things like that. Comics and stuff like that, and I was just like, man, it feels like how it was a long time ago, except you're a lot bigger now. And I have a daughter, and she's 9 months, and basically I'm doing the same thing. I'm showing her the cartoons that I love. I'm showing her the cartoons that I grew up on. and I'm showing her the comics that she can play with right now. Mostly preview books.
Yeah, that's great. You know, it's up to obviously the current readers to pass it on to the next generation. But but you mentioned your brother with the statues and the figures and stuff. That's a thing too that wasn't there when at least when I started getting the comics. There wasn't a lot competing for your comic book dollars. It was you had $2, I can buy 2 comics. You know, I'm doing good, maybe 3 if they're, you know, but now, you know, there's action figures and movies and video games and all this stuff. If you like Spider-Man, you can get your Spider-Man fix without ever touching a Spider-Man comic.
Yep.
Is it a problem? Is it a good thing? I don't know what the solution is. Is it up to the comic shops to make sure these books get into? You know, I'm going to bring up a topic. About comics. Whenever a DC movie comes out, exception of the Joker, whenever they always put banners on the comic books, Wonder Woman's opening in 2 months or whatever. And I'm like, we're buying the books. We know Wonder Woman. You don't need to tell us Wonder Woman's opening in 2 months.
Tell everybody else.
Tell the audience to come buy the comics instead of telling the people to buy the comics to go see the movie. We're already going to see it. It's a given. You know, I'm going to be there opening day, giving them my money. But if the movie theaters would just do, hey, if you like Wonder Woman, go to your comic shop and buy the current issue. I don't know.
Should Kevin Smith bring that back since he's rebooting Jay and Silent Bob? Should he reboot people's idea of what a comic is? Why these cool characters that we're sitting up there forcing in our faces all the time in the theaters, where they came from, why they exist?
I'm with you on that. It's like whenever you watch a movie based on a book, they don't marginalize, like Stephen King. They didn't marginalize Stephen King with It. You go to the bookstore, there's a big It display. Everything's all tied together.
Yep.
But there's a disconnect between comics and the movies, and it's really bizarre. I will say, I don't know if you remember when The Dark Knight came out, the last Dark Knight Rises, the last Christian Bale one.
Yep.
We went into the comic shop. Commissioner Gordon was Batman. It wasn't even like if you saw the Batman and you went in the comic shop, you could read something that was anything like the movie you just saw. So, I don't know, maybe Kevin Feige needs to get involved in the comics a little more and make them more in line with the movies. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's a big topic that as a small press publisher, I have no control over.
Yeah.
I wish I did.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Do you think another reason people that you see a decline in sales and you see it harder for a next generation of people to come in is because we're living in a world now where, you know, we don't collect CDs anymore. We don't collect, nothing is collected. Everything is kind of digital. So people don't we're living in a world now where collecting something is clutter and people don't like to collect because it's clutters up. People like to be minimal. Do you think that might be part of it?
I would say most definitely yes, as I have 40 long boxes in the corner of my son's bedroom. Hey, he doesn't live here right now, so it's okay. But I'll tell you, tonight we went to go watch show my daughter. My daughter's 12. We went to go show her Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which I love, the Kevin Costner Robin Hood. It was in my wheelhouse in 1991. So we went to show it to her, and it wasn't on any of the streaming services. And I'm like, we've got to go find the DVD. So I had to go to behind the couch to all the boxes of DVDs, just trying to find this DVD. And it is like, it's like, sometimes I think, why do we still have all these DVDs? But when it happens, you got to watch Robin Hood. You need to have the DVD. But it was interesting that, because I'm just kind of used now to that. And I don't think I bought a Blu-ray in 2 years. I haven't bought a CD in at least 5 or 6. I'm in that group that gets digital music and gets digital movies and all that sort of stuff. But I still want you to buy my physical comics.
Exactly.
Where can they go to find your physical comics?
CosmicTimes.net. Somebody has the .com and won't give it up unless I pay them thousands of dollars. So
that sucks.
But that's the thing too. I told you I named the fanzine Cosmic Times when I was 14 or 13. And since I named it to now, it turns out Cosmic Time became a thing. Like when I named it, it wasn't a thing. Cosmic time is what NASA uses to track from the Big Bang to now. That's what they call tracking cosmic time. So I set up my website, everything going. And when you Google it, I'm like the third one that comes up. All these NASA sites come up when you type in cosmic time. Somebody told me that, but
that SEO is awesome.
CosmicTimes.net. That's where I put everything on there. Then of course all the social media. Everybody's got to be on social media these days.
So what are the kind of titles that they can find?
Well, I'll tell you, we're talking about the kids, and with the exception of From Blood is not an all ages book. We did a shift a couple years ago to try to do a little more all ages stuff. We have a book called Deep Space Tragedy about a teenage robot rock band on the run. We kind of target toward that kind of tween crowd. We have a book called Sugar Boogers, not Booger Sugar, but Sugar Boogers, about gingerbread ninjas that we target toward kids. And we do a lot of outreach with the Girl Scouts and schools here, and we get a pretty good feedback from the kids. Do they ever come back and buy the second issue? But we try to, we're doing our part to try to get kids into comics, and we do okay with the but even at Comic Cons, our sales are not what they used to be. Everything is hard out there for a comic pimp, man. It really is. How's that for a 5-year-old reference?
I think a lot of that with the Comic Cons, though, is it's another thing is I think it's gone in such a different direction. It's hard. You don't have those hard comic based people there. There's a lot less going there now.
Yeah, well, the shows are more attended than they've ever been, but again, they're not there for me. We used to do MegaCon.
A lot of comic artists and writers and publications either, though.
Well, I found that things really started to shrink for me when the print jockeys kind of took over. You had a lot, when I first started out, it was guys making their own comics, guys selling old comics, and then artists trying to sell original art. And the print thing really wasn't a thing until about maybe 2 or 3 years after I got into it. And that really started to affect independent publishers' sales. That end, there's a lot more independent guys than there were when I started out. Companies like Kablam and the print on demand stuff makes it a lot easier and a lot more affordable to publish comics. So it's crowded in my part. Then you have all the artists, and the worst thing is the celebrities. I love the celebrities, but we were at MegaCon, the last MegaCon we did, and Tim Curry was there right after he had his stroke. He was in no condition to see people, but it was $150 to get a photograph and an autograph with this guy.
Right?
They were kind of just propping up in a wheelchair. I felt bad for him. But that sucks all the money out of room. The cons are getting so expensive to attend.
Yep.
$60 to get in. $150 for this autograph, $50 for that, $20 for a print. By the time they filter themselves to people like me, who they don't even know what our property is, it's kind of, I'm sounding all sad and depressed. This is supposed to be positive. Yeah.
It's good to see both sides of the fence.
Yeah, it is.
It's a different business than it was when I started.
Hey, you know what sells? Pulling at the heartstrings.
Yeah.
It sells.
It's really hard, guys. Please support my
Only
Kickstarter,
33
please.
cents a day. You too can be part of this comic book.
What you were saying earlier, Martin, about having a coalition, if you will, with the Girl Scouts and things like that. Are there any organizations that help get publishers and people that have that industry experience and or link to go to schools and things like that to visit kids and talk to them about what comics are and why they're cool, they're still cool, things like that? Where do you think these movies came from, so on and so forth?
That's actually what we do with the Girl Scouts, and we did it with the Boy Scouts and a few other organizations. The schools, man, it's a hard nut to crack. They don't take kind of what we do that seriously, even though the books like Smile and those other thicker graphic novels sell well to the students that are published by Scholastic. Somebody's got some money in some pockets there. It's really hard.
Great books from 4th grade from them.
Well, yeah, we all Weekly Reader and Scholastic. But it's hard to get in with the schools. It's just, there's these walls and barriers, and comics. I think the 90s, for how great they were for the business and the money that made, really hurt the perception of the industry. Because people think of comics as not even being for kids anymore. And I'll be honest with you, I look at some of these Marvel books, like when they rebooted Spider-Man with the Brand New Day, I was like, I don't think I want my daughter reading what's in this book. It was almost inappropriate for kids. And I was thinking, this is Spider-Man. Should Spider-Man ever be inappropriate for kids to read?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember when they did the Brand New Day, there was the 3rd or 4th issue, Spider-Man got drunk at a wedding and woke up with a woman in his bed. I'm like, I don't think my daughter needs to read that. I don't think she needs to see that,
Matt, was that last week we put that on one of the worst storylines yet?
Yes.
Oh, the Brand New Day?
Yeah. we did last week. We had done bad comic storylines that we didn't like, and I think that was the one that was all in agreement.
Yeah, that was the thing. That I was really reading comics at that time, and Civil War was such a great, it was a milestone for Marvel, and this is what they did with Spider-Man right after Civil War, and I was like,
right,
it wasn't appealing. I don't know. I'm not going to. Dan Slott's a great writer. It's a wonderful guy. Don't hate me on Twitter, Dan Slott.
So, kind of going back a little bit to the crowdfunding thing, would you recommend kids today who are maybe trying to self-publish or publish go the crowdfunding route, or would you think that maybe trying to seek out an independent publisher would be a better option?
I will say the crowdfunding has made it easier for folks. Obviously, as an independent publisher, I'd love you to bring your books to me. But if you have an idea and you have a completed project, Kickstarter is the place to go. But it isn't. It's hard, man. Kickstarter is not as easy as you might think it is. It's you have to have all your ducks lined up, and I didn't quite have them all lined up this time. And the just the animal, the machine that's Kickstarter. I know several guys like Joel Rodriguez just wrapped up his Dust County Chronicles book. He did really well on it, but he was working that Kickstarter so hard. It was taking up all of his time. So it's kind of a balance. If you're a creator, it's hard to create when you're having to run these Kickstarters. But I definitely think it's a way to find an audience. We're finding new people through Kickstarter that we never had before. When we're in Diamond, 60% of our sales come from the state of Florida, because that's where I live. And that's the stores that I know and support me. So, but with Kickstarter, it's a nice national platform that people can discover you on. So that's why we went back to Kickstarter after being in Diamond, just to try to find that new audience, because we're seeing so many people have success with Kickstarter. We felt this is a way to kind of capture that audience. And I think for somebody who doesn't need, if they're doing it themselves, you're a writer, artist, and you're doing it yourself, Kickstarter would be great. But the problem is our Kickstarter were $3,500 because we have to pay to print the books. We got to pay the colorist to color the books. So we have a lot of other costs that if you did it yourself, you wouldn't have. So there's that.
So if someone came to you as a writer with a book in mind, do you help connect them to an artist? Like, do you guys have artists readily available, or do you recommend they reach out like DeviantArt or try to hook up with an artist before making that pitch to someone in your position?
It's always better to have an artist in my mind. We're actually talking to some guys now. It's our second book from Finland. For some reason, people from Finland are attracted to Cosmic Times. I don't know. We're talking to this other company that has this book from Finland. Yeah, we love Finland. But they pitched a book to us, and it's partially done. I'm like, okay, this is something I can work with. Would I take an artist and a writer and put them together? Of course. But at the end of the day, I'm a writer. And my creative director, Zach Bassett's a writer. So, we're not really in the market for writers so much as we are completed projects and artists. So that's kind of the curse of being a writer in comics. It's harder out there for a writer than it is for an artist to find work or to get noticed, because without the art, it's a visual medium. But yeah, so for Cosmic Times, I prefer something that's a little more together. You have a team together. Am I against doing it? No, but it would have to be really something spectacular, because if I'm going to incur the cost of an artist, it's got to be something I know I can cash in on. I know that sounds cold and capitalistic, but whatever. Money is money.
So we had a question from someone in our chat who wanted to know, what's the best way to move your product to the forefront and sell more and move more units?
In respect of just like Comic Cons, or in respect to, because it's I think with comics, just like multiple markets. As far as in Diamond, you got to buy the ads in the catalog, and those are super expensive. I'm still paying off some of that debt. It's kind of what you have to do if you want to get noticed. As far as Comic Cons, signage, I don't know. I wouldn't even know. To get noticed at a Comic Con, that's something everybody struggles with. Yeah. And it depends on where you're trying to move your product. If you're not in Diamond, good luck getting a retailer to even take a look at your book. Even when we're in the catalog, we've had several retailers tell us we just don't order independents. So that's hard. Is that the question? I don't know if that was quite the.
There's also another question in there he said, why don't you go through Amazon? You could make the money. You're cutting out middlemen. That seems something to go do. What do you think going through Amazon? You think that would be too hard? But I never even heard of that until tonight. So
Amazon does self-publish. I know they do a lot of novelists, and I think there is an option for comics on there where they do a print-on-demand service. But I think they take a hella cut out of it. You would have to charge a. See, that's the problem nowadays too with some of these printers and whatnot. You have to charge such a high cover price unless you crowdfunded it to get some of that cost offset. I think Amazon takes a pretty big slice of that when it comes to selling through them. It's a way to get noticed. That's true. I know several. My son's actually working on the poetry book he's going to publish through Amazon, but he understands he's not going to make any real money on it. That's kind of the thing. We've had one of our books on Amazon because one of the libraries had to be on Amazon for them to carry it. Weird. So we put one of our books on Amazon. We sold to the library. Haven't moved a single unit since. So there's that.
So where can they find your Kickstarter and what is that? Like, go through that one more time for us because I find it interesting.
Well, the Kickstarter, I'll let you know. Okay, it originally was a 2-issue black and white miniseries that my creative director, Zach Brassett, brought to me. He had the first issue done, and he's like, hey, because right when things started snowballing, just before we got into Diamond, he's like, hey, I got this idea. My buddy James and I have done almost the entire first issue. It's called From Blood. It's about a mental patient who's like tearing people in half. He's like super strong. Like, I don't think we want to carry a book that's called From Blood and is like super violent. A year or two went by and he pitched it to me again and he said, no, really take a look at it. And the story had heart to it and it had a lot of feeling, a lot of emotion to it that I didn't expect. I thought it was just going to be this ultra violent kind of Punisher in a mental hospital, but it had a lot more, or actually it's kind of the Hulk in the mental hospital when you think about it, but it had a lot of heart to it. And he had the first issue done and it kind of just ended and they had no idea where the story was going to go. So Zach and I sat down with the outline that he and James had. And I'm a huge fan of Richard Donner films. I think Lethal Weapon, the 4 Lethal Weapon films are great. It's popcorn cinema and I love it. Yeah. And he did Maverick and Superman and all that good stuff. So I said, I want to write a comic like a Richard Donner film that just starts and it just kind of keeps going and has these high over-the-top action sequences. And so Zach and I sat down and we hammered out what would have been the second issue of the series. And we had put it out black and white back years ago, but just then we took off with Diamond. And so the book never really found an audience. I never did anything with it. It kind of got swept under the rug. So I was talking, what can we crowdfund? We want to try something with Kickstarter. So we took the black and white pages we had, and now we're having them colorized. We're kind of tweaking things out a little bit, and we're putting it out as a complete graphic novel. So it's an 80-page graphic novel, pretty much about a mental patient who has superhuman strength, is invincible, and he has no idea who he is or where he's from. And the psychologist starts working with him, and then they take off. They're on the run, trying to find out his past. Some great action sequences in there that I just kind of ripped off from not ripped off. It was inspired by the kind of stuff Richard Donner would do. And we put together what I think is a really good story. It's not a kid's book, unfortunately. So you limit your appeal with that, but it's definitely a fun ride. We're kickstarting it, trying to offset the cost of the colorist and to cover the printing. And then we're also give Zach and James a few shekels if we can make it out of the project. And then once we finish with that, we're going to take it to Diamond and then try to distribute it nationally.
So do you have different tiers that someone can do, and then with what do you get?
All that stuff. That's the whole thing with crowdfunding. You have the digital tier that's a lower price, and then you have the regular edition. Then we have a foil edition. Then you can get an original sketch by the artist. We have original pages for sale, and then our final tier is our $200 tier. If you're a retailer, we'll do 25 copies for $200, and I'll have the cover exclusively done for your store. We have a variant cover by Larry Watts, who did Robin Hood for Zenescope and a lot of other books, and we'll put the store's logo on the main character's T-shirt as he's on the cover. So the next week, we're going to be trying to reach out to a lot of retailers and see if we can get a few of them on board. This would be, and they would have the book the same month it's in Diamond, so they would have it in advance of the actual national distribution for it.
Nice. Where can our audience go to find this?
You go to my website, cosmictimes.net.
Oh, it's right there.
You can just, it's right on the homepage. We have if you go to cosmictimes.net/From Blood, it's right there. Or just search for From Blood on Kickstarter, and that's a way to find it. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
I know. Kind of speaking on I'm probably jumping pretty far back, but like we were talking about before we started, I love comics, things like that, and I love watching cartoons. And I wanted to be a comic book artist when I was a kid. And listening to how you got to where you are and the journey that you went to, the journey that mostly everybody that wants to get into the industry goes through. It sheds a really important light, so people have a better grasp as to what is expected of them. But it also to me tells me, okay, what's missing? How can we do this better? How can we do this more efficiently to get more people involved in the realm of comics and interactive, because that's how everything is now. Everybody wants to be involved and say, "Oh, I was a part of this." Are you familiar with manga?
Of course, yeah. My daughter's reading Sailor Moon now. Go figure. Won't read my comics. Never read one of mine, but she's reading Sailor Moon like crazy.
Awesome. I used to watch that cartoon all of the time.
There you go.
So
what's the deal with the tuxedo guy? I don't get it.
Darian. The idea of like the Shonen Jumps and things like that, like an artist and a writer coming together and pitching they're getting past the it's kind of like American Idol but in a magazine, and people vote and say, hey, this one should keep going, and then so on and so forth. Do you think that would work here?
I think 10 years ago it would have worked here. I think it would take a lot of groundwork to get to that. It's almost, again, we're like in a tiny little bubble that no one the mainstream doesn't really think about. It's like all the people that watched Walking Dead. Have they ever read a Walking Dead comic? I don't know.
Yes.
Some have. Yeah, I know. That's a thing too. I have my one of my daughter's teachers reads the Walking Dead graphic trade paperbacks. Like, where do you get them? Orders them online. Go to the freaking comic store.
Exactly.
I have a Walking Dead tattoo.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think something like that could work, but it would have to be built from the ground up. And there needs to be a redefinition of what comics are, I think, going forward, if we're going to survive. I think maybe we need to be looking at like the European model with the graphic albums, the thicker books, or even because again, you look at mangas, and in Japan, it's just everywhere. It's like, oh, I got my manga here, and I'm a 45-year-old man. I got mine. I'm a 12-year-old girl. Everybody's got them. Here, no, but yet here are the number one films in our country are superhero movies.
Yep.
It's finding that transition. If again, unfortunately, Stan Lee was kind of the bridge between comics and pop culture or regular media. Yep. And without him, I don't know, because all the kids I talk to know who Stan Lee is. They know he created Spider-Man. No clue who Jack Kirby is, but whatever. There's not that, we need that bridge between regular mainstream media and comics. And we can sit here and philosophize about it all day. I don't know that there has to be some kind of solution to get it back into the public eye. And I think it's going to take a redefinition. Maybe what you're talking about, turn it into some kind of reality, internet reality show, where, because again, I tell you, the kids today, they're not even watching television anymore. My daughter, 90% of what she watches is on YouTube.
Yep.
The greatest stuff. I mean, it's not bad, like it's not pornography or anything, but it's dad. But it's all these people, doing goofy stuff. The YouTube generation, and they love that stuff. If that's, maybe we need to find a way to tap into that to get the kids on board. The content needs to be more kid friendly in my mind. There's so much we can sit here and say that's wrong with the industry, but there's so many great things about it. But all the wrong stuff kind of blocks people from getting to that. And I think the idea of doing like some kind of contest thing, but it would need to be on a national, some kind of like I was saying, through YouTube or something to tie video elements into it where the kids are to get them into it.
That'd be cool. So Kyle and I actually went to this past weekend to get some comics signed by Todd McFarlane. And
he's in Arizona, right? He lives out there. Yeah.
Yep. And that was pretty cool. And I remember when I saw Stanley, and I think the second to last time he was here at Phoenix Comic-Con, Phoenix Fan Fusion now. He was there with Todd, and they were on the stage. And I remember sitting down and thinking, I need to sit here and watch this because I don't know when the next opportunity for me to do this is going to be. And ever since seeing Todd ask Stan those questions and kind of, bridge the gap between comic legends and the audience and their fans and kind of say, hey, ask us questions. Hey, how do you feel about this? Stan, tell us how you got here, so on and so forth. I was like, I think Todd could do that. I think Todd can do that. There are a bunch of people that can do that.
Kirkman could as well, yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like the idea of what you were saying with bridging the gap, putting this contest together on YouTube or something like that, that would be pretty awesome. I mean, they have people having their exes or friends tattoo them. Why can't we have people having contests to get famous in comic books?
I agree. Again, I think if we can just, like I was saying earlier, the 90s, I think, pushed so many people away from comics that it's a bridge that needs to be built back. I mean, I wish I had the resources to do it myself, but I think a guy like Todd McFarlane or like a Robert Kirkman or Mark Millar, those guys have the clout on both sides, the media and the comics, to pull some stuff together. But they had to be willing to do it. That's the thing.
Exactly. Man.
Hey, look at that.
Hey.
Behold the internet.
That's a thing too. I had to build my own website. That was
oh man.
Well, that's probably being small press. You do most of the work yourself.
Yeah. I know a little bit about that.
But again, I would recommend Kickstarter. He's asked before. I think this kind of spun out of that, asking if Kickstarter is the way to go. I think crowdfunding to get started, most definitely, because it takes money to do anything. It takes money to buy a website. I get that bill every 2 years, and I don't mind paying this. Then Facebook advertising is a cost now. There's so many little costs that kind of come into it. Like we had to get a PO box so my business address isn't my home address because I don't want weirdos stopping by the house. And so these are little costs that kind of come into it. You have to, and the Kickstarters when you at the beginning most definitely would help you, get over that hurdle because it was all out of my pocket. Luckily, I had that good job in IT at the law firm. So which I since gave up. I don't know. I could make a mint in comics, I tell you.
Comics is where the money is.
Yeah. I'm not sure I don't spend more than I actually make. But that's the thing, too. Comics. A lot of the guys who make comics or who buy comics also want to make comics. We got to find those people that just want to buy them to read them.
Yeah.
You guys have any other questions for Martin before we let him go?
No, man.
Okay, cool.
All right.
That was too easy.
Kind of interesting. I don't know.
It definitely was. I want to thank you for your time. I know it's late there, so we'll let you go. But I want to thank you for stopping in and talking to us tonight about Cosmic Times. And everyone, I've got the link on the screen, and we'll put it in our description below. Make sure to check out Comic Times and pick up some creator-owned books and get out there and let's spread the word and keep comics growing. Like you said,
awesome.
Comics
keep them growing. That's right.
You got to get those defibrillators going. Thank you so much. Oh, thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Of course.
You have to keep us updated from time to time.
Oh yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll let you know if the Kickstarter succeeds. How's that? That's the first update. There you go.
There you go.
Thanks so much.
Yep,
Thank
have a
you.
good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.